This episode is presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head Tourism Bureau. Discover the art of adventure at Utah's gateway to the parks. Cedar City is within a few hours' drive from 6 different national parks and monuments, and only 30 minutes from fresh snow at Bryan Head Resort. Check out visitcedarcity.com to plan your next trip. This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center. Dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs, it provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Hello and welcome to the Explore Local podcast presented by Visit Cedar City Bryan Head in partnership with Cedar City Iron County Economic Development, produced by Dallas Smith Media, and I'm your host, David Johnson. Okay, well, today we'd like to welcome Eric Schmutz, who is the former president and CEO of State Bank of Southern Utah and currently the chair of their parent company.
Correct.
Do you want to maybe explain that distinction a little bit?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. State Bank of Southern Utah was formed clear back in 1957, and then as we grew, which we can get into all those histories things if you want to, but as we grew, a parent company was formed that would guide the bank. And so Southern Utah Band Corporation was formed in 1994 and became State Bank of Southern Utah became the wholly owned subsidiary of the Band Corp.
Oh, okay.
And so there's different boards of directors for each institution or each organization, and I chair the Band Corp.
Okay, gotcha. Is that like terms to a board, or is that just ongoing, or how does that structure look, I guess?
Yeah, as in most corporate governance areas, board members are given a certain length of time and they need to be reelected. And ours is 3 years. Every 3 years, a director needs to be reelected to a position and on the Band Corp. And so it gives us an opportunity to reset if we need to on a few things. And so It's very similar to many other corporations throughout the country.
Gotcha. So you decided to retire from being president and CEO, but you didn't really retire then.
Everybody jokes about retirement and says, I'm busier now than I was before. And I never believed it. I thought, no, you're lying.
Right,
But it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. But as far as the bank is concerned, I still am involved because I chair the parent company.
Yeah.
Involving meetings and serve on different committees, and I'm actually serve on the board of State Bank as well. So the day-to-day work is actually being the new president and CEO as of almost a year ago is Trevor Anderson. But I still am deeply involved in committees and helping guide the bank in that way.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, why don't we actually take a step back? How long did you work for State Bank of Southern Utah? When did you start?
Well, trying not to make it too much about myself, but I was going to school at SUU. I was born and raised here in Cedar City.
Okay.
And my father actually was the executive vice president of State Bank of Southern Utah as I was growing up. And so he was there in the inception in 1957. But I always knew the bank to be a safe place and a great place to be. So while I was going to school, I started as a teller at the drive-up window.
Oh, really?
And just to get me through school and have a job, and I had other ideas. I actually got my real estate license and was going to do some real estate things. But then they offered me a job on graduation, and I thought, well, I'll keep doing that.
What did you study in school?
Business administration and accounting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty on par.
Yeah,
there.
it is, yeah.
So you said your dad was vice president?
Executive vice president, yeah.
So did he help form State Bank of Southern Utah?
He did. He was one of the original officers.
All right. Tell a little bit about that. I wasn't expecting that.
I've got some great stories.
Yeah. And you said you don't want to make it all about you, but I think you're so entrenched with State Bank, and hearing that even more so than I realized, that I think it's almost going to be hard to separate yourself from the bank and your career and those sorts of things. So anyways, my point is, don't be hesitant to tell these great stories. Yeah. How did that get formed then?
Well, a long time ago, years and decades ago, there was a bank that was called Bank of Southern Utah. And it predates State Bank of Southern Utah by a long time, but But it began to struggle. There were some economic challenges early in the 1900s and a little bit later, and so it was actually acquired by First Security Bank. And after that happened, of course, that First Security Bank, great institution, but they were being run out of Salt Lake City.
Oh,
and a bunch of local agriculture and businessmen just says, we don't want to answer to Salt Lake City. We want to have our own bank with our own decisions. And if you think about even the Wild West or anything else, a bank was always kind of the center of things and really important to the community.
Yeah.
And so a number of men got together and said, we want to form another bank. And my father was actually working in Salt Lake City and transferred back to Cedar City, where he was from, to work for First Security. And then
he grew up here too.
He did.
Oh, okay.
In New Harmony, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he was recruited to be. There were two officers, Bob White and my dad, Eldon Schmutz, were the two senior officers that started and were there at the beginning in 1957. Gotcha. But the neat story about how the bank started, David, is that back in that day there were capital requirements just like they are today, and different things that they needed to raise money, and they had to do different things to show that they had the strength before they could be given a charter, and then later get FDIC deposit insurance. Well, the fun story is that they had completed all the paperwork and they were ready to have that filed, and for whatever reason, I don't know what the urgency was, but they got a call and they said, if you want a charter, you've got to have that delivered to the state capitol by 5 p.m. on a specific date. I believe it was back in April of 1957.
But they gave him a few days, or it was like that day?
It was like that day. In the morning, they says, you've got to get there. And back then, there was no I-15.
Yeah.
It was a Highway 91, and you went through every small town, and you stopped at every stop sign and every stoplight. Well, two men, Warren Bullock and Lauren Wetton, jumped in the biggest car that they had with the biggest engine, and they says, we're going. So they just floored it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they got stopped by the highway patrolman on the Buckhorn Flat. And it was actually Elroy Mason who grew up. He's a fixture here in southern Utah. He's passed away since. But he stopped them, and they said, well, do you know how fast you were going? And he says, well, wait a minute, don't tell me. Because if you tell me how fast you are, I'm going to have to give you a ticket. And they says, we have an emergency here. And he says, oh, if it's an emergency, let me do something for you. So he called up the line and told them that this car was coming and to let them go.
Really?
So they floored it all the way through these towns and barely made it before the deadline to get the charter in.
Wow. And
so it was kind of an interesting story. And they took the time that it took for them to go. Remember, this is a two-way highway. They averaged 75 miles an hour. For back then, that was a big deal.
That was buzzing.
Yeah. But the neat thing about any successful institution or business is they have a story.
Yeah.
And just like Southern Utah University, I know that you've had SUU on this podcast. President Benson does a good job of reminding the history of how important that was. And the story of back up the mountain and going up on the mountain and Old Sorrel and everything. Yeah. What a neat story about the dedication and the passion the people have to establish something.
Right.
And although this little trip through the car and breaking the speed limit isn't a matter of life and death like it was so much with the university, but the passion and the drive and the dedication of the local people in a town like Cedar City is what makes this town special.
Yeah. I talk about the ultimate police escort. I was thinking maybe you were going to say, like, he's like, well, I'll lead you up. But that's so cool to call up the line and say, hey, we've got something important here. It reminds me, and you'll have to forgive the poor analogy because maybe you've even heard it, but I immediately think of Jimmy Stewart, It's a Wonderful Life, and how central the bank was to the community, especially during that time. And there's something about these small rural towns in Utah that have to provide all the services on their own. And so you have to figure out how to make it work. Everything between your bank, your sewer, your water, your power. That's why in southern Utah you see several different municipalities, little municipalities that have their own power companies.
Yes.
And things, is because in these rural towns, you have to bootstrap it up and figure out how to make it work and provide for those needs. That's why you see Southern Utah University, this Division I university down here in Southern Utah, in what some may see as little old Cedar City.
Right.
And how is this university with the Shakespeare Festival, which is ranked the 3rd Shakespeare Festival in the world, how is that located here? And I think a lot of that goes into the roots of the small town kind of bootstrapping. We've got to find a way to provide for our needs because nobody else is going to do it for us. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, you're spot on. That's
monologue.
exactly right.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is kind of going more into almost this family history that you have with your career. So how long was your father with State Bank then?
From 1957 when it started until he retired and left banking in 1986.
Wow.
For that length of time.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And was he kind of in the same role most of the time?
Pretty much, yes. But back in that day, our bank felt that it was important that there be a separation from someone who was the president and CEO to not be someone who was working day to day and had a desk in the bank.
Okay.
And so the first couple of presidents that the bank had the first 3 did not hold an office inside the bank. They were outside directors.
Interesting.
And so that's what he was. He was actually not even on the board, but he was the executive vice president. And the president was someone who was not keeping an office in the bank. So a little bit different, but today and for clear back since in the 90s, then the president has been someone with an office in the bank.
Gotcha. Now, you said you started off as a drive-up teller.
Yes.
So what was the first real official job that you got out of college that you said they offered you? How did you start there?
I was a consumer lender. And so back then the bank was smaller. It's grown an awful lot over my time, but that was back in 1982. 82, and so I became a commercial lender. Also took some responsibility for the bank card department and chargebacks, different things that we did there. And we started when I was that young with a discount brokerage service, which was kind of cutting edge at the time, to where we would provide the ability for people to invest on their own with a little bit of help and guidance, and set things up through another bank in California that we had. So that was the beginning of my banking career, if you will.
Yeah.
But I left that. For 4 years and went to work for Southern Utah University.
Oh, really? What did you do with this?
I was in the controller's office, but my job was a loan collection manager.
Oh, really? For student loans?
For student loans. Yeah. The university, they were NDSL loans at the time, but they're Perkins loans, I think, now. And they're administered by the institution, and so I would sign them up with their promissory notes and then give them exit interviews when the students would leave. And then my job was to collect them, which was really interesting, you know, over 4 years that I was at SUU. Had a great experience there and loved it. And I still have a passion for the university, obviously, but that was a good experience. And then in 1989, I returned back to the bank when a senior officer retired and was there ever since. So.
And what was that? What did you return as?
I came back as a commercial lender at that point.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And the security officer. You have dual roles, multiple hats sometimes in a community bank, and so I was over the security of the bank and making sure that we were okay with the alarms and the cameras and everything security.
So you're making me realize that I think the average person doesn't really, and myself included, probably doesn't really realize all of the inner workings or even the departments with the bank. I think most people go in, if they go in at all, most people just drive through.
That's true.
If they go in at all, you see some people sitting at desks, which a lot of times are some of the lenders or whatnot, and you have your tellers. But why don't you, for most people that don't really know the functions of a bank, to talk a little bit more about that. What are those areas of function that banks do and the services that they provide? I guess in general, and then I guess we could talk specific about what makes State Bank of Southern Utah so unique.
Sure. Well, the financial industry has really evolved and changed quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But as far as a bank is concerned, the traditional bank would do anything financial that people would need years going way back, decades ago, so that it would encompass everything from consumer lending to commercial lending to agricultural lending, mortgage. It would have everything that someone would think about if they thought of money, mm-hmm. and payment systems, which is a whole other topic. But as things expand and grow, people specialize. And so you might go in there and you're going to see one section of the bank and it is dedicated strictly to commercial loans. Mm-hmm. You're going to see another that is dedicated to mortgage and it's separate. But the unique thing about a community bank, which State Bank of Southern Utah is that you can go to any branch and you'll get the service you need, rather than saying, well, our mortgage company is in Phoenix. Oh, I see. Or let's get you a hold of somebody else in another department or another town. We've held on to that idea that it's a one-stop shop for anything that you will need. We'll take care of what you need. Whether that's a home mortgage or a car loan or a business loan or an ag loan or if you want to have investment services, we offer that.
Yeah.
So that is a difference with State Bank of Southern Utah as opposed to a large regional bank, for example.
I've never even thought about that. I've always heard reference of community bank versus a regional bank or mm-hmm. a big corporate bank. I never really realized, as you phrased it, kind of that one-stop shop, that on some of these other banks, they may not have the services in every branch. You have to go call or drive somewhere else to work out. Am I explaining this right?
No, you are.
I never even thought about that.
And you mentioned something earlier too, that it used to be that everybody would go to the bank.
Yeah.
And I love that we're in eight different counties, 17 different locations, and we have small branches in places like Tropic, mm-hmm. Utah, Escalante, Delta, Fillmore, Gunnison. We have these branches, Orderville, Kanab.
Oh, wow.
And so when you visit those branches, a lot of people still love that interaction, and they want to come in, and it's almost like the hub of the town sometimes. It is. And when I visit there, it's fun to see people come in and they want to shoot the breeze with the employees and just talk about everything going on in the basketball game or whatever. Yeah. And they just love that. But for the convenience and speed that everybody travels at now, a lot of times, they don't want to take the time to come into that. And so there is a tendency to compartmentalize and to say, this can be done online. This can be done remotely. And we've answered that and provide that option. We have good technology that you can do your banking on your phone. You don't have to come talk to a live person if you don't want to. And the larger that communities grow, that seems to be the trend that people go to. But I love the sense of community. And so a community bank is just that, one that you can rely on. We invest in the community, and I will say the difference in what a community bank does, such as State Bank of Southern Utah, is that we're centered and we're headquartered here. We're the only one in Southern Utah that is. And the other institutions are great. I'm not going to say anything negative about them at all, but there is a difference.
Yeah.
And so we're here in the community. Turf. Yeah. And so everything, the money that is put into State Bank of Southern Utah, we're headquartered in Cedar City. We have branches, like I say, in these 8 other counties, but it's all invested and kept right here. We manage our money here.
Yeah.
And so that's a difference that the larger regional banks are administered out of larger cities, and they're somewhat restricted a little bit more in what they can and can't do for the fact that they're not located right in the community.
Yeah. It's interesting, and maybe it's just because I'm not in this world, but I feel like And I'm kind of going along the lines when you're talking about a community bank. I feel like I used to hear the term, or at least maybe in television or something in pop culture, you'd hear the term, I'm a banker.
Yeah.
And I feel like you don't really hear that nowadays anymore. I'm a banker. And I don't know if that's just because of almost the way, how almost because there's not really the sense of a community bank like there once was in a lot of rural America, or I don't know what that thought is, but I guess you also don't hear, I'm an economic development director. Nobody grows up and says, I want to be an economic development director, right? Although nowadays I think a lot of kids are like, I want to be a podcaster. But
that's the cool thing. Well, I love your example. I love your example though of It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. You can sense that, hey, here's something that's really needed and can make a big difference. You see in that movie, the switch of if he wasn't there.
Yeah, right.
How things just weren't the same.
Yeah, the impact and
not for good. And maybe this wicked thing for good is a big thing right now, But I'm passionate about community banking, and like I say, nothing against the large regionals, but community banking is special and different, and something I'm passionate about. And we spoke of passion earlier, and I think that keeping that relationship between people is really, really critical and important.
Yeah.
So that you can look somebody in the eye, you can go into them, you can talk to them about what your needs are, what you want to accomplish, what your dreams are. And then that was the neat thing that kept me as a commercial lender for 25 years or so before I moved into the other role, is no day was exactly the same. You had a different project, a different development, a different type of loan, a different type of situation that you could make work in a different way with different products, and it was never dull.
Yeah, that's awesome. You've given me thoughts of a few different directions I'd like to take the conversation, but before I do, and I can't remember if for some reason I'm having like a deja vu, but in talking about It's a Wonderful Life, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, but my favorite line from It's a Wonderful Life is when he's back and he's running down the street and he's screaming hello, Jimmy Stewart screaming hello to everyone, and he says, hello, lamppost, to the lamppost running by. How wonderful it is to be back. Anyways, sorry. I'd be remiss if I didn't say my favorite line from It's a Wonderful Life. It just cracks me up so much. Well, let's stay on the theme of community, and then I'd like to move into how state bank and community bank service small business and business. But right now, let's stay on the topic of community. State bank is one of the staples in our community. When you go to like SUU basketball game, you see the sponsorship there. Talk about how state bank is involved in the community outside of necessarily directly with banking. How are you and your employees in the organization, how are you involved within the community?
I'm glad you bring that up, because we that's been a hallmark and a game changer for the community and for the bank. We feel there is an obligation. When other people succeed, the bank succeeds. But you'll see state bank involved in a lot of things that I think develop the community in a good way. I'll start with the youth. We go into the schools and do programs about teaching about savings or banking in general. We'll go to adult role classes in high schools and talk with them about what it used to be balancing a checkbook. Nobody does that anymore, too much, but finances and how important it is that you manage your money.
Can I interject on that?
Yeah, sure.
So one of my teenage daughters is just loathing math in school, algebra and whatever else she's having to take. And she's gone off on tangent. She's like, why aren't they sitting here teaching us how to file our taxes and keep a bank account? And she starts naming all these practical things that she sees my wife and I doing. She's like, why do we have to bother with algebra when they aren't even teaching us the basic things that we actually will have to do on a daily basis? And I thought, you know what? That is very insightful. I mean, it's the classic kids hate math and when will I ever use this in my life? But I liked the converse side of what she was saying of there are practical things related to math and finances and things. She's like, why aren't we learning this? And I remember when I was in school, and I don't know about when you were in school, but you would take almost these home ec type classes, and you'd rotate through different types of things, and you would learn stuff about
Right.
like how to keep a bank account or how to maintain a checkbook. But we don't do checkbooks. It's online and things now.
Use an app now.
Yeah. Anyway, so sorry for the digression, but I think what you're saying about going into the schools and teaching those things, it really has a lot of value. Like my wife and I, it was probably after my third job out of college that we started going, we should probably figure out this retirement account thing, because nobody really taught us that. And since then, my wife has gone and helped teach family members how to do it, even our parents, how to better manage your retirement account, because we just didn't learn those kinds of things. So sorry, I totally interjected, but I love what you're saying about going in with the schools and teaching those practical skills.
Well, I think it's important to get those basic skills early, because people, when they get into school or they get into a profession or they get something else, they're so laser focused on. I'll use an advanced or graduate situation. Whether you're going to be an attorney or you're going to be a physician or you're going to be anything, they're so focused on that a lot of times, hey, they can go out afterward and make some money, but if they don't know how to run the office, they'll recruit people and help them.
Yeah.
But it helps if they understand the basics about managing money and different things so that they can be successful that way.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. The other thing that we really like and invest in is the younger generation and the youth. We were talking about the kids. And we've just created and rolled out a new app for kids. But
oh, really?
But the Southwest Livestock Show is a great example. There's nothing like doing something hard, learning how to do something back in the roots of this community. Some of the agricultural things. We're a big supporter of the Southwest Livestock Show, and support the youth that are working on something and reward them a little bit by help buying their animals, boosting the price, doing different things so that they get a return, and then hopefully that there's some connection that, hey, I what do I do with my money? I just sold my animal for something at this auction. What do I do with this money to make the most of it? And there's opportunities, if you'll look for them, to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah. Well, why do you think being engaged in the community, kind of indirect from what your business does on a day-to-day basis, why do you think being engaged in the community as an organization is important? And what has it done for State Bank? Well,
it's not all about the bottom line. You have to be successful as a bank in order to continue. So you're always wanting to make sure that you're making smart decisions and you're doing things, but keeping a well-rounded life. I mean, investing and helping with the arts, looking at the athletics, looking at the agricultural arm, looking at all of those things that make up a community and touching on all of those so that you have the opportunity to help participate in making well-rounded individuals and giving opportunities to help them succeed in whatever they want to is a big part. A bank can make a big difference if they engage that way, rather than just saying, let's take what we can and let's try to make the bottom line look as good as we can and let's raise our stock prices up or whatever we need to do. If you invest in the people, they'll invest in you.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because really what I hear you talking about is, and it's the more subjective, it's the relationship building.
Definitely.
I know in economic development, a huge part of my job is the relationship building and being a bridge builder between businesses and communities. And I know there was one city that I was in, and we were going after a big company to come to town, and our neighboring city was doing the same thing. And our neighboring city, where I was at before, was taking a very just all analytics, giving them the numbers, and they were actually offering double the incentives that our community could even fathom offering, and they even had connections with the top corporate leaders, and they reached out to them. But I had been working with the commercial broker that represented this company nationwide, and I'd been working on that relationship for a year or two, and I knew what he wanted. I knew what he was trying to achieve, And because of that, they still moved forward with the community that I was working in for half the incentives. And I always attributed it to the relationship building. Now, did I still need to provide them numbers and show them how it made financial sense for them to come to our community? Absolutely. But I knew things more than the numbers. I knew what that company was looking for and what they were trying to achieve. I knew where they wanted to be. I just needed to give them the reasons to be there and the numbers to justify it. But that relationship is what made it possible for me to better know and understand what they were looking for. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing you talk about too.
It is. You have to think of the long game in everything, you know. And I hope I'm okay mentioning something like this, but you can have people come in and invest a lot of money in a community or in a project or something, but what's the motivation behind that? Is that to get more recognition for them in the fact that they want to bring some relationships or some money maybe that will benefit them?
Yeah.
Or is the main goal to say, I want to build the community?
Yeah.
And you're not going to see that in a lot of, I guess the example I was going to use is, should we put our name on a building or on something that's going to make a difference that way? Or is it maybe investing in the people who are inside that building?
Yeah.
And helping them be successful,
right,
and doing different things with those relationships on more than just the corporate level. Maybe it's more on the grassroots, and the people who are really there and going to perpetuate that same type of a spirit in a community.
Yeah,
you've got to have cohesiveness in the community rather than division, and hopefully by investing in the right things, you can bring people together.
Yeah. So over the years, what are some of the, if you, whatever you feel comfortable in sharing, what are some of the organizations, you've kind of highlighted a couple, but what are some of the organizations that State Bank has sponsored and supported over the years?
Well, we have a number of those. I've mentioned Southern Utah University, the Utah Summer Games, the Music Arts. I mentioned the agriculture and the livestock show. And those types of things that we feel make a difference in the community is where we want to focus our efforts.
Yeah. You were also talking a little about how you, and I'm kind of staying on the line of community here, but you mentioned you were a commercial lender. Am I using the right terminology?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Did you focus a lot on small business, big business, kind of the breadth of everything in between with the commercial lending, or tell a little bit about that?
Generally, small business has been our bread and butter. You know, I think dealing with the small entrepreneur or the startup business, whatever it might be, helping them and giving guidance. I can remember when I first started out, I said, you know, I'm not going to be your answer for everything. I'd suggest you find a good attorney and a good accountant. You know, let us be the financial side of that, but let's work together on that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really key in helping people be successful.
Yeah.
Is not just demanding that your way is the only way. You know, have other people involved, and don't be afraid to have other people join them in their journey to be successful.
Yeah. One of my philosophies in my career has always been, well, I don't know if philosophy is the right word, but things that I've always said is any success that David Johnson has had in my career has little to do with me and has everything to do with knowing who to bring to the table to make something successful, right?
Right.
And that doesn't mean I'm not still strong-willed and think my ideas are great, you know what I mean? And I'm going to advocate for those things. But it's also knowing and understanding the other perspectives that people are going to bring to the table, and how do you bring those perspectives to bring about the best results, right? The reason why I wanted to dive in to the commercial lending too is I pretty much knew you were going to say small business, especially community bank. And what I would be interested in hearing and sharing with those that are listening are what are some of the, especially those small businesses who are maybe struggling, or somebody who's trying to start up and don't know how to even start getting, because there's a lot of businesses that struggle and they just don't think, well, I could go get a loan that would help me, fill the gap of what I'm trying to achieve? And I'm speaking very generically, so it's hard to be specific, but what are some of the main tips that you give or advice you give to these, whether it's startups or small businesses, throughout the years? And what are things that you see small? Well, let's start with that, and then I'll go into my next question. So what are some of the main tips and advice that you typically will give small business?
Well, that's a great question, and I hope I'll do it justice. But if it's a startup, first of all, a community bank. Yes, we are a community bank, but we've grown so large, David, that we started out very small. We're total in assets. We're pushing $2.6 billion in assets at this point. But for a startup business, I think that what we've always said is you've got to have a business plan. And if you're not comfortable in putting that together and having us maybe help a little bit, there's a small business development center, there's the innovation center, there's a lot of other resources here in town, the SBDC. There's all kinds of different things that we would refer them to. And I was serious when I said, get an accountant and an attorney to talk with you about your business structure. Do you want to form this as an LLC? Do you want to do this as an S Corp? How do you want to set this up? There's tax advantages for different ways, and make sure that an accountant, make sure that you classify. There's a lot of different resources that we will refer them to when they're getting started up, to get started up. But a business plan and talking about growth and how some of the pitfalls that we can maybe say, hey, maybe be careful about how fast you grow.
Right.
Everybody wants to just be this big successful business, but you can be a flash in the pan, and it can be go away in a hurry.
You see that all the time. These businesses who maybe had one or two stores that are just wildly successful, and they say, well, let's expand this, and they grow, and they can't maintain the growth in those same areas at the same level.
Yeah. Do what you do and do it well, and make sure that you don't get too, I'll say, greedy. Stay true to your core values, and you'll be successful.
Yeah. It's interesting when you say that about the accountants. So my wife, she's a professor at SUU of nursing, but she's also a nurse educator for a small hospital, and sometimes will contract services. And we went to, I should back up. We've always done our own taxes, our own retirement planning, all that kind of stuff. We're very independent that way. But we finally have gotten to the point in our careers where we're like, maybe we should go ask someone, an accountant, for some advice, someone to prepare our taxes for us, a CPA, and different things. And so we went to someone, and we knew that some of the contract work that she was doing as a independent contractor was that she was having to pay all these taxes off, right? And we get talking to this accountant, and he goes, well, pretty much like, I can't remember what it was. It was like 40% of the income that she was making was just going to taxes.
Right.
And he starts talking about, here's different ways that you can structure it that will bring that down to like 20% or 15%. And our minds were blown. We're like, oh my gosh, how much money have we just wasted? And how much stress have we gone through trying to manage this over the last few years, when we could have gone to an accountant that's their expertise, get some advice on how to better manage this.
Right.
I think so many small business owners, my wife's dad is a small business owner and has been for years, and we've seen the ups and downs. And so many small business owners think they just have to do it all on their own. And most of the time, a small business owner, you know what you're good at. So why not hire someone else to help you manage the things that you're not good at, that's not your expertise, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know, like, what of the small businesses, and I don't know if there's some really awesome case studies that you've seen where you've done commercial lending too, and then you've watched them just grow and blossom in the community. Are there good examples you have of that?
Yeah, I do, and I'd be careful to mention very specifically, but it's really satisfying for a lender knowing that you drive down the street Drive down Main Street, down 200 North, or in the other communities in St. George or any of the communities that we're in, and you look at the business, and you can you know that business. You help finance it. You've seen them succeed, and they're succeeding, and they're thriving, and they're doing well in the community, and you know enough about that business that I'll bring joy into that. That's really joyful to say, hey, we've made a difference here and helped this happen. We've had a lot of people come back and just say thank you so much for two reasons. Sometimes one of them is for helping us succeed, and another is saying thank you for not letting me do something. Giving me that advice to say, you better be careful about adding that third location right now, or do something like that. And they come back and they say, now that was the right thing. We've had other stories where they said, oh, I should have listened to you, and we're not always right. I'm not saying that, but we offer enough help. And these other people that they bring in, like your example, you bring an accountant in and to a small business and a tax person, they're going to say, you're only looking at your gross sales. Look at all the other stuff that can happen that you can change a little bit to be much more efficient, much more successful, and avoid some of these other really cash-eating problems that you have. And so there's a lot of different things that turn you on about your job, but I guess the satisfaction of just saying you're helping someone succeed. Right. And that's a two-edged sword in Cedar City, especially with the growth that we've had. Yeah. And we're getting into more development. There's a lot of development projects, subdivisions and housing projects and everything else, which is changing a little bit of the
dynamic.
Of a smaller town and everything else. And some people are saying, why are you helping grow? We don't want to grow, Well, to be a vibrant community, you need some growth. Yeah. And so there's a little bit of a balance there, but I think just helping people succeed in what they want to do is a great reward and return.
Yeah. And I've touched very briefly about with some of the other podcast guests about some of the growth, and I always say that good planning helps guide growth to where you want it. Now, the great thing about Cedar City is we are in Iron County, and Iron County is very much still your traditional rural community. Cedar City is what I term as a transitioning rural community, and we still are very much the rural hub, not only for Iron County, but for pretty much a multi-county spread, including some of those in eastern Nevada that come work and shop and provide for some of their needs here. So we are very much this rural hub, but like you said, there's some growth that needs to occur, and I'll say this for a couple reasons. One, you're multi-generational, and I hear people say all the time, I wish I could move back to Cedar City, but there's not a job there that I can take. Or conversely, kind of on the same coin, a parent saying, I wish my kids could move back here, but there's just not enough jobs offered. Well, we're starting to see that change a little bit. And that's part of what I always say, my job is to help create jobs. And my job is to help provide the needs and the necessities to the community. And my job is to help diversify our economy. So it's not just our taxpayers paying everything. When you bring in new businesses that are paying good sums of property tax, or a new business that has great sales tax, well, that helps offset things for the residents that live and work here and enjoy their quality of life here. And so there is a balance in that.
No question.
Yeah. And, and I think, we see the growth in Washington County and
which
on the Wasatch Front, and we're nowhere near that.
Right.
And so it's awesome to be able to bring these businesses, and as we look at businesses coming into the area, to say, is this right for our community? And then also focus on our existing businesses and that business retention, and partnerships with other businesses in the community, like State Bank or other organizations like Southern Utah University. Those partnerships help us get a collective sense of what do we want our community to look and feel like, and how do we continue to guide our community forward? And I'm kind of rambling a little bit. But
no, your points are very well taken. And I think that people always say, well, our biggest export is our children.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
and we want them to have an opportunity to maintain a job here and a lifestyle that they can make a comfortable living here. So I think that's very important, and economic development needs to happen. There's some hindering facts, water being one, and
sure.
all of these other things. But in order to make a community one that is sustainable, you've got to have growth. You've got to have some of that change,
mm-hmm.
and we shouldn't be afraid of that.
Right. In fact, in the business world, when you see businesses that are afraid of change, that's usually when they go under. Blockbuster is a great example of that, right?
That's a great case study.
Yeah, there's a lot of businesses like that just dominated or were very successful, but when they're afraid of change, it hurt them. And so in a community, it's a little bit different. We want to maintain those community roots, that rural feel, that rural lifestyle of why people live here, right? We don't want it to be overrun, but at the same time, we need to look at, well, what are the needs? And I often tell people who demand Costco or Sam's Club, which I'm working on those things.
A lot of rumors
Target.
about that all the time, right?
Yeah, there is, which I'll dispel those rumors right now. They're not coming right now.
I got you. You're right.
But I say, okay, we can pursue that, but you need to understand that they want 150,000 or 100. Target told me a little bit ago they wanted 140 to 150,000 population in a 5-mile radius. Well, I don't think most people in this community want to see that kind of population radius, right? Costco wants 110,000 in a 5-mile radius. But there's other ways to achieve some of those goals. So our Walmart, number one grossing Walmart in the state. Why is that? Because we are the rural hub. So if we can tell the story to those businesses of, hey, look, we don't need this crammed population that you see in other markets to achieve the sales that you need, because we service our dynamic here, our rural lifestyle here, services look much different than they do in some of your other metro areas or markets that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. So being able to tell that story that leverages the dynamic of our community and maintains the integrity of our community, that's a harder job to do, but it's doable. And it just takes a collective support of the community to help tell that story.
It does, and I think that you have to have a good mix of the past mm-hmm. with what the future looks like.
Right.
A great example is the Livestock Heritage Festival that we just experienced.
Right, yeah.
People who have never witnessed that before, they start understanding and feeling, hey, this has a history. This is a neat thing. To see sheep running down Main Street, or see those different things of just saying these are the types of industry that really began this community years and years ago, and holding on to some of those things and those values is important.
Right.
Even though you're not going to be, it may not be the dominant economic driver of so many things, but it's still there, and it's an important part of who we are.
Yeah. Well, and sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah,
got you thinking about livestock, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. Oh, and it's part of our history, but it's a continued part of our story.
Should be.
And that was the intent of the Livestock Festival, right? Livestock Heritage Festival is to say this is our heritage, but this is something that continues to play an important role in our community and in our economy. What I love, and this is going back to what I was saying in the very beginning about, small communities, they bootstrap it and they provide for their needs.
Right.
Well, this area was founded on mining, iron mining, and agriculture and some of those things. But through the years, when mining has waned, we picked up. We made this a tourism destination. And then again, when mining waned again, we made this a manufacturing destination. And now our economy is such that when the mine recently put a pause, we really didn't see much of a blip in our community. We were able to absorb a lot of those jobs because we've diversified our economy in a way that's healthy, and we still have agriculture, we still have mining, we still have manufacturing, we still have tourism, we still have all of these different industries, but now they all buoy each other up, and you see that in a lot of towns that have become hyper dependent on one industry. You hear this about, like a small town where, half the population worked at the plant, and then the plant goes down and now half the population is unemployed. But Cedar City and Iron County has taken a very smart approach and lessons learned from the past, but still retaining the integrity of that past in our current, in our present, and in our future. I think it's just wise. That's one of the things that I've loved about working here, and it makes it very easy for someone in my job to say, here's why this community has so much value to it.
Yeah, great leadership in the county who recognize that. I think of our Chamber of Commerce. They do a wonderful job of everything that they do, and welcoming all kinds of different diversity and businesses that come here, but still showing respect and homage for the roots of who we are. Yeah. And it's just a wonderful mix to be in a community like Cedar City.
Yeah.
And the smaller, where our banks are located, they each have their own little flair, their own little part in the community that makes them blend in really well, and you want everybody to succeed if they can. So, so a sense of community is really, really important, and we can't lose that.
So I'm going to digress, if you don't mind. I want to digress in a whole different realm. So, my daughter does cross country. Your granddaughter, I have a few kids that do cross country, and you have kids that are involved in the community. And I remember seeing you at a cross country meet. You had a ball cap on, probably jeans and a t-shirt, and I had to keep double taking. So I'm so used to Eric in a suit, and I'm like, is that Eric? And and I'm like, no, that's definitely him. And we got chatting, and it was fun to see you. And people who've known you throughout the years probably know the non-work side, but it made me go, I wonder what Eric's favorite hobby is, before retirement. Like what are the things that have always interested you, and what are the things that are most important to you in addition to your work life, just to let people get to know you more.
On the personal side, David, that's family is always number one for me, always has been, but I like for my career, I was always but dressed like this, but with a tie. And so, and between that and church responsibilities, that's what people always saw me at. But I could put on my Levi's and boots and put on a hat and go to a store, and nobody knows who I am.
It's like you're incognito.
They can't see the bald head. They're saying something's wrong. And I have a brother who looks just. We get confused all the time.
That's
and
funny.
Many times they think I'm him, and vice versa, and we won't correct people unless it gets real critical, and then all of a sudden, maybe you need to talk with my brother. but he is carrying on a fifth, sixth generation cattle ranch. I help with that quite often. We own land together. We just delivered our animals, and so those are some of the things that I like to do. Still keep dealing with the cattle.
What's your favorite part of working with cattle?
Working with my brother mainly, but and his boys. He has boys, but there's just a good feel, a feel good thing when you can be working with the land and working with animals and keeping in touch with the Western heritage that you have. And it's in my blood. It's been in for generations, and so we still have, a couple of 100 head of mother cows that we just finished delivering and putting out on the winter range, and that's a great diversion. Always has been, because of other things I've been involved with. That's hasn't been my main focus. Yeah. But I love doing that. I love track and cross country. Yeah. Your daughter is phenomenal. She is a fantastic runner, and my granddaughter just loves.
She's amazing too.
Working, running with her. But so keeping up with those types of things is a passion of mine as well. My wife is much more passionate. She will go to everything that my grandchildren are involved in. But Cedar City, in a community like this, and having those types of opportunities, it's never one-dimensional.
Yeah, right.
You know, there's work and there's church, or there's agriculture. There's so many different things that you can be dimensional on in many ways, multi-dimensional.
So I have two other things that I kind of want to dive into, but it builds on this, actually. Just trying to decide which way to go about. I think I'll start with, in your career and in life, if you don't mind sharing, who have been some great mentors to you, and what are some of your favorite or best lessons that you've learned from those mentors in your career or in life in general?
Well, that would bleed over between what I spend the majority of 8 to 10 hours a day when I was working as a banker for so long, and my personal religious beliefs and mentors on both sides.
Sure.
But in both of those arenas, being truthful, making sure that you are honest in what you do. And I can remember when I was working at SUU, and I had an opportunity to go back to the bank, where I had figured I was going to make SUU my career. But then I had a wise man who had been in banking. It was not my father; it was another gentleman who just said, where do you feel like you can make the most difference, and do you feel like you can get along in that space? Do you feel like you can be successful? And if you follow your heart, and if that's what you want that to be, rather than where will you make the most money, or where will you feel like you'll get the most accolades? That wasn't the issue, and I think I've always kept that in the back of my mind, that's what's going to make you feel better about whatever you do. So some of the mentors I had were both on the religious side, church side, and in business, that just said, keep your core values, no matter what the consequence might be, and you'll be better off.
That's awesome. In a similar fashion, and maybe it's the same thing, if you're mentoring someone moving along in their career or in life, what's some advice on top of what you've learned from others? What's some advice that you've learned on your own that you might give others?
Well, I would think that I mentioned the long game a time or two. And I think that it's very easy to make a decision on something that would be short. I would, if I were to give some advice, or if I were to mentor someone else, I think where do you really see yourself, and where do you want to be? And there's different ways to get there. It may be taking a job or a role in something that may not be exactly what you thought. I was going to make it in real estate when I started, and things just happened to work. And I thought, well, where do I want to be, and what's going to be the best for my family? And if that's the most important thing to you, would be your family, then maybe you're going to have to accept a different role in the short run, but keep that long range goal part of what you really want to achieve and get there. Yeah.
It's funny how life kind of, so for running, I make training plans all the time, but I design my training plans very regimented to keep me moving forward, but I design them in a way that's also flexible if things come up. And what you're describing just very much makes me think of that is, have your goal in sight, but be flexible that you may find what you didn't realize along the way.
Yeah, maybe I'll bring in a sports analogy into this on running.
Yeah.
When my oldest daughter, Kendi's mother, was running, she ran in high school and collegiately at SUU, and she ran the long races. She ran the 10,000, the 5,000, and the steeplechase, and was very good at it. But along the way, you're never going to win every race.
Yeah.
And I can remember she had a coach in high school, and I've used this example before, but his name was Robert Corey. Bob Corey, still around.
Oh, yeah.
Great to coach. And he would be yelling and screaming so much for every single runner all the time. And being naive to cross country when I first started, because I wasn't a runner. I'm not. But my daughter was, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go watch this. And I didn't understand cross country at all, but I could see him yelling and screaming for every runner.
Yeah.
Every thank
kid,
you. Yeah, in a positive way. Hey, you know, and he was so excited for somebody who, and I thought, she didn't win.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand even what the acronym PR was for.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but every time when they got a personal record on there, he was so happy and excited for that person.
Yeah.
And they felt successful. And whether that's in a cross-country race or it's in business or whatever you're doing, you've got to, comparison will steal your joy if you let it.
Yeah. You've
got to make sure that you set your personal best or personal record in all phases of life.
Yeah, for sure.
And celebrate those.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate that, because that's, I literally was talking to my kids about that, staying on cross country, but not digressing too much. You know, they ran state, they got third in state.
Right.
And I know they were wanting to get first in state, and they were heartbroken, but they got third. And that's exactly the phrase that I use, is that comparison is a thief of joy. You just need to look at what you accomplished and how hard you've been working towards this. And I think that applies in so many areas in life.
Definitely.
Well, okay, to finally kind of wrap this up, I do want to kind of end taking it back to State Bank, and thank you for indulging me. Over the years, you've seen probably a lot of change and growth in State Bank. I look at the branding, which, by the way, I love the new branding. And I'm sure there was very passionate feelings about the prior branding before that and going to rebrand. Talk to me a little bit, just, a synopsis of, and if you want to use branding as an example or something else, but the growth that you've seen with State Bank, and then from there kind of cap on your hopes for the future as they move forward.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I'd be happy to. The bank at the very beginning has some very simple branding. Marketing and branding and image was something that wasn't really focused on that much back in the 50s and 60s and even later on. But not long ago, probably in the 90s, we developed a logo. And it had a bristlecone pine. It had Thor's hammer. It had a number of different things in it, and it described and represented us really well. Mm-hmm. But then you can move into the digital and the other. Notice it became rather busy.
Yeah.
And so we have a fantastic Cordell Morris. I'm going to use his name.
Yeah, Cordell's awesome.
We were lucky enough a few years back to bring him to State Bank of Southern Utah, and told him that we wanted to develop a new brand, a new image, and actually, I brought this for you.
Oh, you're so kind.
So this is. The brand that of course you've seen, and it is still a bristlecone pine. We did not steal that from Southern Utah University, who still has a bristlecone. But there's a neat story behind that tree.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And it's one of the oldest indigenous trees in the area, and they may not look like a Christmas tree. They're not pretty all the time.
Yeah,
but they endure. They've been through, they've had branches blown off. They've had all kinds of drought and stress and everything else, but they've survived and they've thrived.
Yeah,
and it's similar to what, and their roots go deep and they hold on, and so that represented. And there's a much longer story that I won't go into here, but come into the bank and we'll learn about that a little bit more, But this image of a tree with deep roots, with the ability to withstand, and not only that, but thrive in hard times and in good times, represented what we feel represents the bank.
Oh, that's
and so
wonderful.
that's how this came to be, and of course it's on pins, it's on,
and that's good branding.
And it's really fun to see what Cordell has done with that, designing this. Of course, he had a team. Mm-hmm. He'll be the first one to deflect and said, there's a lot of people who put this together, but he was the driver behind it. and we'll see that this brand somewhere totally, even out of the country. We've had people take a picture and say, "Look what I saw," and it's just something that we have had a lot of love and success for.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, it's amazing to excuse me. It's amazing how simplicity and brand can tell a story. And throughout the years, I mean, talking cattle, well, where does the phrase brand come from? Branding your livestock, right? And usually those brands on livestock are very simple, right? Like a letter or a shape or something very simple. And a lot of times people think you have to communicate your whole story in your brand. And often you'll see logos that are more of a collage. And what I actually love about this branding is it simplified it down and kept, no pun intended here, the roots of your story.
Exactly.
And I think that alludes to moving forward in the future. And so that's kind of where I'd like to end is what is your hope for State Bank as they continue to move forward and as you kind of pass the baton?
Well, we would like to make sure that we're continually being relevant and successful in every community that we serve. But we recognize that we've made a conscious effort not to push into the Wasatch Front. We know our rural area. We know what we do here. We have our sandbox, if you will, and that's grown and gotten bigger, but we're not trying to be everything to everybody. We want to do what we do and do it well. Yeah. And I think that in the real challenge that I see, you mentioned where we're going forward, is technology is moving at a tremendous speed. Artificial intelligence, digital currency, fraud, all these kinds of things you have to stay up on to be relevant. And so we, fortunately, are large enough that we can invest in those types of things and bring the products that people need to be successful in the future. We want to keep our roots in the past. Yeah. We want to make sure that we have the values that are created there, but we have to be relevant in the future in financial services. And so for State Bank of Southern Utah and any financial institution, we want to make sure that we're delivering what the people need to be successful. And that's going to involve artificial intelligence. It's going to involve digital currency in some way. And doing it smart and safe is what we intend to do.
That's awesome. Well, Eric Schmutz, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to have you, and it's a pleasure to get to know you more.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
All right.